It's a schism that started with an election. 2006 was the last time Palestinians made it known who they would like to lead them. 10 years after the fallout between Hamas and Fatah, another election appears to be the only thing that can bring them back together. And while reconciliation efforts have foundered in the past, the blame game has flourished. With Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas 13 years into a 4-year term, and Gaza a few years away from what the UN says will be unlivable conditions, many Palestinians in both territories are politically disillusioned.
We dream of unity, but in practice, we've tried it so many times, once in Mecca, in Qatar, and other initiatives.
The street is not concerned about the Palestinian reconciliation. People's concern is one thing. Why did the water stop? And why was electricity cut? People are frustrated. After suffering from the siege for 10 years and more, I started hoping that Fatah or Hamas will never come back to Gaza.
Mahmoud Abbas is reviled by many in Gaza for his tactics. And yet, they appear to have worked. It was in March that Hamas set up an administrative council to better govern the Strip, a step regarded by Abbas and his Fatah followers as formally establishing a shadow government. That was when Abbas ratcheted up the pressure. He cut off payments for electricity in Gaza and slashed salaries of unemployed Palestinian Authority workers living in the Strip. Abbas also cut payments for Hamas prisoners in Israeli jails, reduced medical supply shipments, and announced that more than 6,000 PA workers would be forced into early retirement.
I think the ball is now in President Abbas's court. He has to make the necessary decisions to complete the reconciliation, such as ending punitive measures against the Gaza Strip.
Now that Hamas has agreed to dissolve that council, the question is whether the group will agree to place its security forces under Abbas's control. And while rapprochement was the intended goal, Abbas may be wondering if he should have been more careful with what he wished for. His victory over Hamas weighed down by heavy baggage, responsibility for a territory on the brink of collapse, more friction with a bristly US-Israeli alliance, and new elections that could see his party overrun, as they were a decade ago. Randolph Noble, The Newsmakers.
Well, to get more on this, I'm joined now from Gaza by Ahmed Yusuf. He's a former senior advisor to the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. He also directs the House of Wisdom Institution for Conflict Resolution and Governance. And in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, we have Issam Aruri. He's the executive director of the Jerusalem Legal Aid and Human Rights Center. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Ahmed Yusuf, if I can begin with you, sir. We've seen reconciliation deals in the past, in Mecca, in Sana'a, in Cairo, in Doha, in Cairo again, in Shati refugee camp. Why should we believe that it's going to work this time around when it failed all those other times?
Yes, we should believe that this time we hope that it's going to be work. 10 years of failed attempts between Fatah and Hamas to reconcile their rift. This time they lost confidence on the street. Nobody anymore respecting the two parties. Nobody accepting to continue this way. They became fed up of these failed attempts. So the pressure from the street became very high. And it's like Gaza became like a Pandora box. You either try to find a solution to very miserable life, or otherwise the people will revolt against the situation. Not just here in Gaza, we know that also the situation very bad in the West Bank. So I think both have been realized that they have to find a solution. They have to bridge the gap and stop hindering the national reconciliation from achieving their goals. So I do believe this time the level of seriousness is more than any time before. And also we both build a confidence in the Egyptian role. In the past, maybe Egypt wasn't, they've been taking sides, and they've not been honest enough on both sides. But this time we trust Egypt, and we tested them in the last couple of months. They've been trustworthy, and that's why we can go ahead and telling Egypt, you go ahead, you are the interlocutor, we trusted you, and we accept what you suggest for both of us.
Issam Aruri, are you as confident that this is going to work this time around? Because it seems as if, as we heard in that report, the ball is now in Fatah or the PA's court, because Hamas have done their part. They've dissolved that committee. They're saying, okay, your move, PA. Is this going to work, Issam?
I'm not sure if it will work or not. As a matter of fact, most Palestinians are welcoming this, and they are happy for this development. But most of people are still dealing cautiously with this development, because what you indicated, there was so many reconciliations in the past that did not work and did not continue. We don't know what's new this time. We can see that there is more seriousness from the Egyptian government. There are more pressures on the ground on all parties, but still we need to be cautious. Even the mentality that if parties will start to kick the ball into each other's field, that happened in the past, and if it will continue, I think this will end up with some other reconciliations in the past, unless we deal with all the details and the results and the impact that affected the people's lives, either in the West Bank or in Gaza, and more importantly in Gaza.
Ahmed Yusuf, help me understand this. Did Hamas take this decision because Gaza became ungovernable, because it became too difficult? I remember when I was in Gaza, people were saying, hey, we're getting 4 hours of electricity per day. Civil servants are not getting paid. We blame Fatah and we blame Hamas. We blame everybody. This is a big mess. Was Hamas forced into this because they couldn't control Gaza anymore and the people were turning against them?
No, there are many other reasons that pushed Hamas to take that serious decision and accept what the Egyptian has been proposed for them. And I do believe that the situation in Gaza helped in that decision, because the situation became unbearable and people are suffering a lot. And because most important is that we lost actually the confidence on the whole Palestinian project, we lost confidence also on our authority. And the Palestinian cause has been losing, and the Israeli is the only one who benefiting from the situation that Palestinian became divided, and they are not be able to work hand in hand. The situation that the Palestinian project is not anymore being taken seriously by the world community or by the region, and everybody is became busy with certain things away from our Palestinian project and the needs to do certain things to make the Palestinian issue at the top of the Arabs' agenda and Muslims' agenda. That's also the way that we're seeing the retreatment, or that we are losing on both global and regional level, that making the people to believe that if we are not making concession right now, then the whole Palestinian project will be a failure.
Mr. Yusuf, I have an interesting question for you. Let's park aside the international reputation of Hamas and what the world thinks. But what I'm very interested in is in the fact that you believe that Hamas lost a lot of the street, right? A lot of people, particularly in Gaza, might not see Hamas in the same positive light anymore. Because it suggests to me that maybe the siege worked. Israel blocked off Gaza. The Egyptians helped them block off Gaza. The theory behind the siege was you squeeze the strip for as long as possible until the people turn on Hamas. And now, aren't we seeing that? So didn't the siege work?
Yes, of course. Actually, the division weakened the whole Palestinian question, and the Palestinian people in Gaza, they are not angels. We are human beings. We have certain demands that the authority should make sure that it's available for the people. The unemployment rate is more than 60%. Who can afford that? People are suffering. We don't have a qualified hospital to treat the people, providing medical treatment to the people. And the crossing, most of the time being closed. Electricity is just working for 2 or 3 hours a day. This is not a life that anybody can afford. So that's why we have to listen to the demands of the people and making this kind of concession that making maybe there is something much better could come. We have to give the people a glimmer of hope to continue their resilience against to the occupation and to steadfast and to stand behind the movement. Otherwise, we're going to lose everything. Yes, Hamas and Fatah, both of them have been lost a lot of their supporter. Yani Hamas and Fatah, every party has lost at least the best they can get, maybe 25 to 26% from the Palestinian voters. Yani. So we know that we both losing, and we have to come together, to work together and to strengthening our unity to keep the Palestinian resilient and also be able to stand against the occupation, right, and also to be able to defend the Palestinian people if there is any Israeli aggression against Gaza.
So let me ask Issam Aruri, since elections were brought up, if there was an election very soon, how do you think it will turn out? Who will the people vote for?
I think it's early to predict, and I am not sure that Israel will allow unified elections to be held in the West Bank and Gaza, a unified one. Israel is observing, and Israel was the first obstacle that pushed towards this division. By arresting, and till now it continues to arrest Palestinian legislators, not allowing, restricting even the movement of elected people. Israel has its own project of annexation and building its apartheid system. Israel doesn't want a 2 states or a 1 state solution. Israel doesn't want the Palestinians to enjoy any equal status at this part of the world. It will continue its project, and I guess Israel will not allow fair and honest elections to be held both in the West Bank and Gaza. But if it allows till now, there is no agreement on the electoral system that will be implemented, because we have different laws applicable to this, and that leads us to the legislations that took place differently on 2 tracks in the last 10 years in the West Bank and Gaza. To start with agreeing on the electoral system. After that, I think we can then talk about expectations and what might happen. Till now, now it's almost 11 years that the last elections took place, and that means that all the generation 30 years or below did not participate in those elections. In a young community like the Palestinian community, where 72% of the population is under 30, it's unpredictable what this generation might vote for.
Right. Ahmed Yusuf, as part of a reconciliation deal, the president, Mahmoud Abbas, would want to have control over all the security forces. Realistically speaking, would Hamas ever allow those security forces to be under Abbas?
I don't think so. Yani, this is a matter, depends on the level of trust that we can build with the President Abbas. We are not going to surrender all the things that we built all these years to defend Gaza and as a tool for liberation, give it to somebody that he doesn't have that much trust among the Palestinians when it comes to their weapons, the way that they should keep to defend themselves. So I don't think this is an issue on the table. This is something that maybe the Egyptian, the interlocutor, will try to find a way how to coordinate and cooperate with Hamas, how to make sure that this issue, the military or the military might of Hamas, yani, can be handled in the way that not to give others something to reject the national reconciliation. I do believe that the Egyptian, they have been discussing these things with the people of Hamas, and they have reached a conclusion that they should be in the hands of Hamas to protect and defend the Palestinian in Gaza. And if there is something to have a controlling the military wing of Hamas, this is something could be come as a coordination and discussion and dialogue between Hamas and the interlocutor, and also between Hamas and President Abbas. Yeah. So I don't think this is something easy. Hamas will surrender to Abu Mazen because the level of trust is not exist yet.
Well, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll have to watch this closely and wait and see as to how this unfolds between Hamas and Fatah. But for the moment, on paper, there's a prospect of reconciliation. Let's see how it goes for Gazans, for people, for Palestinians who live in the occupied West Bank and elsewhere. Ahmed Yusuf and Essam Aruri, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.